This is Right to Life Radio with John Gerardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi.
Well, in the week since this show last aired, we finally actually had the official nomination of Judge Barrett to be the next Supreme Court Justice. We've had a presidential debate in which one of the two presidential candidates declined to say whether or not he supported, packing the Supreme Court of the United States, which would be kind of a big deal.
John,
we'll talk about that later in the show.
Well, he can't answer that question because then the answer would just become the issue, okay?
Yeah, it's almost like it's a political issue that you talk about in a political campaign for a political office.
John, you have to elect the candidate to find out what's in him.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be talking about a shocking, controversial statement that Judge Barrett signed on to back in 2006, in which she, who everyone and their mother knows is being picked because she's so pro-life, said that she's pro-life and that Roe v. Wade is bad. Joining me to talk about it all, the CEO of California Family Council, Mr. Jonathan Keller. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi. Great to be here. Back from Washington, D.C.
Yes, you were in D.C. when Judge Barrett was nominated. I'm sure you would have texted me a selfie from the White House had you been in the Rose Garden for the nomination, ceremony there.
My FOMO, my fear of missing out, was in overdrive because I was literally mere blocks from where it was occurring.
Right.
I did reach out to my contacts inside the White House. I did.
You tried to get in.
I did. I kind of floated it. I said
I would have been disappointed. I would have been disappointed if you hadn't.
And I have to say, in the past, I have usually not actually done that. I've usually been on the receiving end of emails and thank you, great.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, I actually said, hey, is there just any chance there might be any openings? And they were very gracious. With Franklin Graham here and 50,000 people, we just don't have enough tickets. And I said, that's fine. So, it was, John, I was impressed because at the Rose Garden, there were many of our colleagues and allies from other organizations.
Several of my old professors were there. I know Professor Orlando Carter Sneed,
yes.
who is the director for the Center for Ethics and Culture at the University of Notre Dame, and one of my professors. I took several classes from him, and he directs the great Vita Institute conference that's held at Notre Dame every year. I know he was there. The dean of Notre Dame Law School was there. Marcus Cole, I believe his name. He's new. He wasn't at Notre Dame when I was there.
Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life.
She was there.
Penny Nance from Concerned Women for America.
Antonin Scalia's wife, Mrs. Scalia.
That was such a great shout out.
She's the
so
best.
Cool.
Maureen. Maureen's been at all of the Supreme Court nominations, at all those ceremonies, which is great.
And Justice Scalia's son, Eugene Scalia, who is now the Secretary of Labor, was in attendance. So,
and as Trump said, some good genes in that family. I wasn't sure if that was a pun on Eugene Scalia. Anyway,
it was good.
It was a very cool thing, and Judge Barrett's speech was very cool. I was delighted to learn that. So Judge Barrett has 7 children, and I was delighted to learn that one of her children is named John Peter, which I did not know, which is also the name of my son, John Peter.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So let me ask you, John. I was joking with some of my friends, given the fact that both you and your wife have close personal ties to Notre Dame and Amy Coney Barrett. If yet another Gerardi girl graces the world with her presence, is Amy possibly on the short list for names? That's
a very good question. Let me tell you, if she authors the piece overturning Roe v. Wade, it's
kind
up
of a
there.
lock.
This is a very interesting question, and I will ponder it.
Yes.
I will ponder it. I'll put it in the hopper.
Okay.
So anyway, all right. So there's a lot of news to get to. I think since we've been talking about her now, and by the way, Right to Life Radio, a production as always of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. I think we're going to get started with what's going on with the Barrett nomination, since we've been talking about her just now. So since merely a few hours after our show aired Saturday morning at 9 o'clock last week, Judge Barrett was nominated to the Supreme Court officially in a ceremony in the Rose Garden by President Trump. Our show was at 9 o'clock. She was nominated at 2. And I'm just delighted with the pick, obviously. I think also politically speaking, this is a shoo-in. You have what people forget is that the political situation now is different from the political situation with Kavanaugh. There are actually 2 more pro-life senators, 2 more Republican senators in the Senate now than there were during Kavanaugh. There were only 51 Republicans, 2 of whom were pro-choice. Now there are 53 Republicans, 2 of whom are pro-choice. The 2 pro-choice Republicans, they don't sound like they're too sure, but the other 51 are all on board. So I think it's kind of a slam dunk nomination for Judge Barrett, unless...
John, I have been reliably informed that because of this new letter that Amy Coney Barrett signed, which we're about to discuss, this means that all those Republicans in tough re-election races, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, Cory Gardner in Colorado, even Lindsey Graham in South Carolina.
They're all going to abandon ship.
I don't know if you knew this, John, but actually, apparently, South Carolina is secretly pro-choice.
Yeah. Well known. South Carolina, well known for its radical pro-abortion viewpoints.
Yes.
So it's probably a shoe-in politically. But the big issue that's sort of come up just earlier this week is this letter that Judge Barrett signed back when she was just Professor Barrett. This is back in 2006, okay? And Judge Barrett lives in, I'm not giving away the story here, she was a professor at Notre Dame for many, many years. She's a judge on the Seventh Circuit and still lives in Indiana. So she lives in St. Joseph County, Indiana. Okay, that's where South Bend is located, up in northern Indiana. This is about an hour and a half east of Chicago. It's right near the Michigan border. So in St. Joseph County, there is a pro-life organization called Right to Life of St. Joseph County. It's very similar to Right to Life. Yeah. It's
suspiciously familiar.
Yeah. If you think, hey, that sounds kind of like Right to Life of Central California, it's a very similar kind of organization. So Judge Barrett, like many pro-life professional people who live here and who support us, Judge Barrett, pro-life person, professional person, supported Right to Life of St. Joe County. And St. Joseph County Right to Life published this statement in 2006. I think this is probably for the anniversary. This was at the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. And I'll read the full text of it. St. Joseph, Right to Life, St. Joseph County. And this was published in a 2-page spread in the South Bend Tribune, which is the main newspaper in South Bend. And the one page has this statement. The other page has a big, long list of signatures of different people who live in St. Joseph County, one of whose names is Amy Barrett. So let me read the statement that she was signing on to. Roe v. Wade, quote, an exercise of raw judicial power, which was that's a quote from Supreme Court Justice Byron White, who was one of the original dissenters in Roe and a dissenter in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The text of the letter is this. The Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision legalized abortion for any reason. Now, after more than 32 years under Roe, more than 47 million unborn children have been aborted. The majority of these abortions were performed for social reasons. Yet poll after poll continues to show that an increasing majority of Americans are opposed to abortion as a method of birth control. And in 2000, the Supreme Court ruled that Roe v. Wade allowed and protected the brutal partial birth abortion procedure, a practice opposed by over 70% of all Americans. It's time to put an end to the barbaric legacy of Roe v. Wade and restore laws that protect the lives of unborn children. So there you go. Roe v. Wade, more than 32 years, more than 47 million children dead and counting. So that was the statement. Judge Barrett signed her name to that. Now, everyone on the left is flipping out over this. Jonathan, you are tied in with the left because you have this bizarre group of liberal friends that you message with all the time who seem to be keeping your finger on the pulse of the far left.
I try.
And they are basically saying this means she cannot be a impartial arbiter of any abortion decision. She has to recuse herself from any abortion decision going forward. If she,
right.
All right. Let's dig into this.
Right.
Expressing a policy preference on something when you're not a judge does not disqualify you later on as a judge from hearing cases that relate to that policy position.
Sure.
Giving an opinion on even a Supreme Court decision prior to becoming a judge does not disqualify you later on from hearing a court case as a judge on that Supreme Court decision. It does not disqualify you. Okay. Now, being married to one of the lawyers for one of the side, or being married to one of the parties in a lawsuit,
that
disqualifies you. Having a business relationship with one of the parties, that disqualifies. There are instances when Supreme Court justices do have to recuse themselves. this is not the kind of thing where you have to recuse yourself, where you're a public official, you're a law school professor. You write about the law. You write scholarly articles where at various points you are giving your opinion about Supreme Court precedents and saying that you don't like some of them and like others. Guess what? If you're on the Supreme Court someday and every Supreme Court justice has scholarly work to their name, then yeah, of course you've got stuff on your record. That doesn't mean you're unable to be on the court. And this is far from the first person to hold this particular seat on the Supreme Court to have held controversial views on controversial topics.
Well, John, as an example, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Okay, her immediate predecessor.
In 1972, and I'm quoting here from Wikipedia, but it says in 1972, Ginsburg co-founded the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, and in 1973, she became the project's general counsel. So she was not a law professor at the time. I'm sure she probably taught some classes. It says she had been a fellow at Stanford during that time, but her primary work...
She was running an advocacy organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for 7 years before she was nominated. She was nominated by President Carter in 1980.
To a federal judgeship.
So for 7 years, not, I signed my name to a
statement that I may or may not have read in 2006.
She literally, it says, participated in more than 300 gender discrimination cases.
Right.
Not as, I'm an advisor. No, as an advocate. She actually argued in front of the court, in front of the Supreme Court. She argued at all these different levels. She took a explicit position.
Yeah. And you'll note when Ginsburg was on the court hearing the case, I forget the name of the case, but it was a case about whether the Virginia Military Institute, which is a state-run college in Virginia, that it kind of functions like West Point. It kind of functions more like the Citadel, or not. It's not quite like West Point, but it is a sort of military academy. VMI had traditionally been an all-male college, and when Ginsburg heard the case about whether it was unconstitutional for them to remain an all-male college, she didn't recuse herself, in spite of everyone on planet Earth knowing exactly where she stood on it, based on her 7 years of advocacy work prior to becoming a federal judge. Based
United
on
States versus
everything.
Virginia in 1996.
Yeah, United States versus Virginia. So Ginsburg didn't have to recuse herself from that case, because this is not something where you have to recuse yourself. Look, people act as though what the Republicans are doing is so sneaky and underhanded and evil. But let's just be blunt about the politics. Liberals changed the game in 1973 by saying we are going to use the court and artificially create a constitutional right to abortion, which is allegedly hidden somewhere in a penumbra of the text of the Constitution.
John, I want to point out one thing to you.
Yeah.
So it's key that you brought up United States versus Virginia, and I don't want the viewers or listeners to think that I am more learned on Supreme Court precedent than I am. I literally just looked it up on Wikipedia. Yeah. But as a perfect example, so United States versus Virginia in 1996, a landmark case in which the Supreme Court of the United States struck down the longstanding male-only admission policy of the Virginia Military Institute, VMI, in a 7-1 decision. Mm-hmm. So Scalia was the only person who dissented. Mm-hmm. As you said, Ruth Bader Ginsburg did not recuse herself. Justice Clarence Thomas, whose son was enrolled at VMI at the time.
Oh, so he had to recuse himself.
He did. Okay. Now, there's an example of maybe a conflict of interest.
Yeah, a personal interest in the organization that where his son could potentially be impacted. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So he recused himself.
That's an example. Yeah. And yet, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, as you said, 20 years before had been litigating these exact types of cases
for years,
didn't feel any need.
Yeah,
to recuse herself.
I don't think it was improper of her. I don't think that was improper on her part. And again, this is the hypocrisy of the left. The left managed to get totally legalized abortion, all 40 weeks of pregnancy, any reason, through the courts. Republicans, understandably, conservative, pro-life people, really. We've been dragging the Republican Party kicking and screaming with us on this venture. Pro-life people have basically dragged the Republican Party to get presidents, to nominate Supreme Court justices who have different judicial philosophy, so that eventually we can get to the point of overturning Roe v. Wade. We've been open about this strategy for 40 years, about that's what we want to do. And now all of a sudden, when we have a Supreme Court nominee who finally, thank God, is explicit about what she actually thinks about this issue, which it's never been like illegal for us to do it. It's not like it disqualifies you to take a position on abortion before you're nominated to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Finally, when we do it, the left they're clutching their pearls like, oh my goodness, you're gonna nominate someone who thinks abortion is wrong to the Supreme Court? Yes, that's been the point all along. It's what we've been trying to do. Are you daft? Like, of course. That's why we want her. That's the point.
Yes.
It's been the focus of pro-life political work for 40 flippin' years. No duh, she's pro-life. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about the debates and Vice President Biden's refusal to answer whether or not he would pack the Supreme Court. We're hot today on Right to Life Radio. Back in a second. It's Yacht Rock Week here on Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much. This is the Doobie Brothers. Michael McDonald on the pipes there, and the keys.
Thank you, Michael McDonald, for being on Right to Life Radio.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to support this show, if you like this show is a production of Right to Life of Central California, and you can support our work going to rtlcc.org. We've got our 40 Days for Life campaign coming out. Thank you so much to everyone who's been out volunteering. We may have even saved a baby this week. We talked with a girl who was going into Planned Parenthood, and some volunteers came out. A shout out to Omar and Sophia for doing a wonderful job talking to this young lady. They're helping volunteer. They're coming out when we're out there, and they're sort of volunteering with this group called Love Life, which is out of North Carolina. So they're wonderful people. So we're so happy, so happy to have maybe made a big impact in the life of this one young lady. So anyway, prayers for that young lady, and support Right to Life if you appreciate us being out there, praying and trying to talk to these women and couples going in. rtlcc.org to support us. All right. This is kind of a shorter segment, but we'll really dig into it in the next segment. And we need to spend some time, as important as the Barrett nomination is, we need to spend some time talking about the debate. And the most important moment of the debate for those of us who are pro-life is this sort of dual question, which we've talked about on this show, the dual question of, one, the filibuster rule in the Senate. Is this going to be eliminated? Because if it is eliminated, and the filibuster rule in the Senate is that, generally to advance legislation in the Senate, you need 60 votes rather than just a simple majority, 50+1. And that rule is called the filibuster rule. If you eliminate the filibuster rule, then you don't need 60 votes to advance legislation. You just need 50+1. If the Democrats do that, and many of them are pledging that they will or should, if the Democrats do that, then it opens up the possibility that Democrats could pass a simple law, simple majority in the House, majority in the Senate, and the president sign off on it, changing the number of justices on the Supreme Court, increasing the number of justices, adding 4 new justices to the Supreme Court to give the Democrat appointees a majority. Biden was directly asked this question by Chris Wallace. He was asked, Mr. Vice President, do you support abolishing the filibuster and packing the court? And this is not the first time Joe Biden's been asked this. He was asked this by a reporter about a week prior to that. And Biden simply refused to answer the question. He just refused.
And he didn't just refuse to answer the question, John, like dodge it and artfully say, well,
we'll see.
He specifically said, I'm not answering the question.
I'm not answering the question.
He didn't just passively,
we'll have to see,
yeah.
It depends on how, how extreme this is. This is, blah, blah. No, he didn't mince words at all.
No.
He said, I am not answering this question.
But John, why did he not answer the question? What was the specific, explicit reason?
Because it would become an issue.
If I answer the question, you're going to report on it, and that might affect my chances of winning.
Right. So it's which he didn't say those exact words. That was Jonathan's. But it's
he
pretty
did say
transparent.
You'll report on it. It will become the story.
It will become the story.
That's actually what he said.
Which, in fairness, yeah, it will become the story because it would be the most significant change to the structure of American government since, I don't know, the Civil War. I don't know. I mean, or since, I don't know, changing direct election of senators, like it would genuinely be the most disruptive, the biggest change in this very structure of our 3-part system of government: executive, legislative, judicial government. This is the biggest change to our governmental structure in decades, probably since they amended the Constitution to allow for direct election of senators, I'd say. This is an enormous change. Oh, hey, Frank Sinatra, what are you doing here?
That's how big of a change it is.
This would be an enormous change. We just need our normal outro music there, not Frank Sinatra. This would be such an enormous change. Thank you. And if for Joe Biden to simply act as though, I don't need to. That would just be a big distraction from the issues. This is the issue.
Yep.
It is the issue. And we'll dig into why it would be the issue up next. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Back after this break. Christopher Cross. Joining us here on Right to Life Radio, Chris Cross, Jonathan Keller, John Gerardi. Right to Life Radio. It's Yacht Rock Week here on Right to Life Radio. We're playing a whole bunch of groovy classics from the 70s. The best bumper music in the greater Fresno area radio market and perhaps the world. Thank you so much for listening. Right to Life of Central California is the person bringing you this show. We want to thank all of you who support us, and particularly those of you who support us through our 300 Club. If you go to rtlcc.org, if you like this show and you want to support it, the best way to do it is through the 300 Club. For a mere $25 a month, you help support all of our operations here through Right to Life of Central California. And we've had so many people sign up for our 300 Club to help support our work. It's been just wonderful to have your support. I'm going to read off all of our new 300 Club supporters just to thank them publicly for their support of us. Again, it's $25 a month. That's $300 a year if you do the math there. For those of you in Rio Linda, as Rush Limbaugh likes to say, you do the math there. $300 a year. It's not a huge amount. You're probably spending more on streaming services you don't watch.
Or shouldn't watch,
frankly. And it goes to a great cause, and it's tax deductible. So I want to thank Rita Hoffnecht, Jose Iniguez, Denise Bentker, Monica Shackleton, Jillian Hatch, Yvonne Rudolph, Richard Menno, Susan Larson, Joseph and Daira Forestieri, Walter and Sally Lauritsen, Anne-Marie, it's either Anne-Marie or Amy Marie. We couldn't really read it quite closely, but thank you, Raider/Suniga, Ronald Taylor, Jonathan and Julia Keller. Thank you so much. Judith Frampton Bins, Jess and Martha Rodriguez, Stan and Darlene Spano, Julie Heltney, Tom and Karen Fernandi, Jeff and Jamie Francis, Kenneth and Dora Beeston. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to us and helps us do what we do. All right, we need to talk about, as we said in last segment, the most important thing that was talked about during the debate that didn't get enough coverage, and frankly, I think Chris Wallace kind of let Joe Biden off the hook on this.
What?
Yeah, shocker. Chris Wallace kind of let Joe Biden off the hook of this, is the question of whether or not Mr. Biden, if he wins, whether or not he will try to pack the Supreme Court, which is to say add more seats to the Supreme Court in order to bring about a Democrat appointee majority on the court.
But John, look, let me stop you right here. I have been reliably informed by
John Roberts?
Well, no, by blue checkmark people on Twitter that Donald Trump has already packed the Supreme Court because he's looking at appointing his third justice, and that accounts as
you mean
through
the exact normal procedures that are described under current law, and not by adding more seats ideologically?
Well, yeah, but
under the normal procedures prescribed by law and the Constitution.
It's the same thing, basically.
It's the same thing.
It's just because Trump has 3, so Biden should get at least that many or more.
Right, exactly. Of course, that makes total sense. So this is the difficulty. The Democrats are arguing that the current Republican appointee majority on the court, which is currently at 5-3, could very soon be at 6-3. Basically, the Democrat argument, and this is very much motivated by abortion politics, because they're counting the noses in the room, and they think they might have 5 votes to overturn Roe v. Wade, and if they add a 6th, they're definitely going to overturn it. John Roberts doesn't want to be the 5th vote without a woman to overturn Roe v. Wade. He might be the 6th. So they're trying to count noses, and they see here's a woman being nominated to the court. John Roberts is already kind of conservative, but he's scared about being a 5-4 controversial majority. This could be the moment when Republicans have the means to overturn Roe v. Wade, or that pro-lifers have the means to overturn Roe. So their argument is that this Republican appointee majority is illegitimate, and there are a couple reasons. One, Antonin Scalia died during the Obama administration. He died in February 2016, in the last year of the Obama administration. Obama nominated someone to replace him, Merrick Garland. And the Republicans who controlled the Senate at that time said, no, we don't want to confirm Merrick Garland to that seat. And Mitch McConnell specifically gave this kind of quasi-rule precedent for it, saying that in an election year, when the presidency is controlled by one party and the Senate is controlled by another, You never confirm a Supreme Court justice. It's never happened in American history. So no, we're not just going to confirm whomever President Obama sends. We're going to wait until after the election. Now, McConnell was very specific in the language he used. Unfortunately, a lot of other Republicans were not, like Ted Cruz, like Marco Rubio, like Lindsey Graham, who all just said things like, you never confirm a Supreme Court justice in an election year, as if it's...
Ted Cruz!
Yeah. So they were a little more loosey-goosey with it. So,
and I will say, John, just to be fair,
yeah.
Everyone realized there is a political aspect to this confirmation, and there was a political aspect to the 2016 lack of confirmation. There's always a political aspect.
It's the one part of the process that's genuinely political,
Yes.
and it's supposed to be.
So I will say I am sympathetic to our Democratic friends who point out the hypocrisy among certain
Some Republicans, and not McConnell.
Yes.
I'll just make
Yes.
that clear. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that.
I wish everything was absolutely consistent. I also wish that Judge Bork would have gotten the same deference that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did, or
and
that
Kagan got,
Yeah.
and Sotomayor got. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wish Bork had gotten that. I wish
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas had gotten that, and I wish Brett Kavanaugh had.
Yep.
So anyway, after Scalia's death, the Republicans in the Senate more or less refused to confirm Judge's nominee, Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, and held that seat open for a whole year until after the 2016 election, in which, by the way, Donald Trump did not get a majority of the popular vote, and then nominated Neil Gorsuch. So the Democrats look at Neil Gorsuch being on the Supreme Court and think he is illegitimate. He shouldn't be there. The Republicans only got him on there through dirty dealing, sneaky tricks, violating our norms and processes. That's the only way he got on the court. Nominated by a president who didn't even win the popular vote. Then they turn to Brett Kavanaugh. They look at Brett Kavanaugh and they think he's illegitimate because they're pretty sure he was a mastermind teenage rapist. So they look at him as illegitimate. They believe all of the accusations against him. They view the Republicans not believing those accusations and voting to confirm Judge Kavanaugh anyway. They view that as also illegitimate. So they look at Gorsuch as illegitimate. They look at Kavanaugh as illegitimate. And now they look at Barrett as illegitimate because of the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died so close to the election, and the Republicans are going to get her confirmed in such short order, again in an election year when they couldn't get their Supreme Court justice confirmed, Merrick Garland. So they're going to look at this 6-3 majority and 6-3 Republican appointee majority, and motivated by their fear of an overturn of Roe v. Wade, they're going to say, this is illegitimate. We need to pack the Supreme Court basically to restore legitimacy, to restore balance to the to the court. Star Wars joke there, Jonathan. Feel free to laugh.
Balance.
Yeah, balance. Yes. Balance to the Force. You were supposed to bring balance to the Force, not destroy it. Or
yes,
whatever.
that was supposed to be Anthony Kennedy.
That was supposed to be Anthony Kennedy. Anyway,
Anthony Kennedy, the only person more annoying than Hayden Christensen is Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Or Jake, what's his face is Anakin
Jake
Skywalker.
Lloyd.
And Jake Lloyd.
Ugh.
Anyway, so as a result, that's what the Democrats are citing as their justification for packing the court. That basically these three Republican nominees and confirmations to the Supreme Court were in some way illegitimate, so we need to pack the court. What they overlook is this. Gorsuch Merrick Garland being blocked and then Neil Gorsuch getting confirmed was all done legally through the constitutional structures in place. The Constitution says the president nominates, and the Senate has the authority of giving advice and consent to confirm the nomination. And the Senate's advice to Barack Obama in 2016 was go pound sand, and their confirmation their consent was withheld. So everything the Republicans did with these three nominations is all being done in accordance with existing law and constitutional structures. There might be informal norms that were violated. The Democrats might disagree with their political strategies. There might be a couple of Republican senators who now kind of look hypocritical. But the fact remains that everything they did was lawful and in accord with current law and the Constitution. What the Democrats are suggesting to pack the Supreme Court, basically, one, this would be the single biggest change in our structure of government, I think, in a century. Because basically you are going to change the you're going to pack the Supreme Court, add justices to the Supreme Court purely in order to change its ideological makeup. You're brazenly just admitting that you are using the court to institute your preferred ideology. And once you open that Pandora's box, you can't close it again.
They essentially become super duper legislators.
Right.
They become the House of Lords.
More or less, yeah. So as Joe Biden himself said, okay, this is Joe Biden talking about packing the court in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
In 2019, Joe Biden basically was asked, do you support packing the court? And Biden said no. And his justification was, look, if we get in power and add 3, then they get in power and add 3, and it takes away any legitimacy the court has. That was what Biden said in 2019 before Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat opened up. But now he refuses to say what his position is.
John, imagine if the Republicans in 2012, and specifically Mitt Romney, had run their election campaign, because Barack Obama had appointed 2 Supreme Court justices at that point. Imagine if he said, you know what, I just got to say, there are now the most number of Democrat-appointed justices on the court in 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is. And obviously, these are hard left ideologues. You've got Sotomayor, Kagan, you've got Breyer, Ginsburg. You have all these people that are hard left. Obviously, if I win in 2012, to restore balance to the court, we're going to need to add 2, maybe 4 new justices just to bring balance back.
Everyone would have lost their minds if he had suggested that. And with justice, okay, this is what happened. The last time a president tried to pack the court was in the 1930s when Franklin Roosevelt tried to, because he had a couple of adverse Supreme Court decisions against him. He was passing all this New Deal legislation, and the court kept blocking him. So here's what happened. Roosevelt's party, the Democrats, controlled 74 of the 96 seats in the Senate. He had just won re-election as president. He had 334 of the 435 seats in the House. The Democrats were in total control. Roosevelt introduced this law to increase the number of justices on the Supreme Court, and it completely failed. The chairman of the House Rules Committee called it, quote, the most terrible threat to constitutional government that has arisen in the entire history of the country. This is someone from Roosevelt's own party saying this. This measure, wrote the 1937 Senate Judiciary Committee, again, controlled by Roosevelt's own party, quote, should be so emphatically rejected that its parallel will never again be presented to the free representatives of the free people of America. So that's how much a completely Democrat-controlled Congress in the 1930s thought that packing the Supreme Court was such a horrible, horrific violation of our national and constitutional norms that they said that these Democrat senators and Democrat members of the House told their Democrat president who was proposing this, in spite of the fact that they easily could have done it, absolutely not. And not only absolutely not, we hope no one ever introduces this again. But again, the whole reason for introducing it, it all boils down to abortion. This is the reason that underlies it all. It's a 6-3 majority on the court for Republican appointees, and the Democrats believe that that majority could overturn Roe, and they will do anything possible to stop it, including trying to pack the Supreme Court. And the fact that Biden is asked about it and refuses to answer the question during the debate, and Chris Wallace doesn't press him on it, Biden needs to answer this question before November 3rd. The American people need to know where he stands on this issue before they cast their votes, because I think as big an issue as coronavirus is, as big an issue as the economy is, as big an issue as foreign policy is, this is the single most important issue in this election because of how it potentially impacts abortion policy and how it radically reshapes our governmental structure. When we come back, the reasons why Biden isn't expressing his viewpoint. That's next, right here on Right to Life Radio. Jackson Brown with us today on Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much for listening. The best bumper music in the greater Fresno area radio market. Thanks for interrupting me, Jackson. All right. Right to Life Radio. We've been talking about the possibility that a Biden administration would push to pack the Supreme Court. Now, I don't know that it will actually happen. I think it's much more difficult to actually do than a lot of left-wing activists think. You've got senators like Dianne Feinstein who oppose the idea, who've openly opposed the idea, and I'm sure Dianne Feinstein is not the only member of the Senate.
John, I will say that's the great irony. It is arguably just as likely that Biden is refusing to answer the question because he is afraid about losing his left,
right?
As he is the middle.
And this is the problem. So why is Biden refusing to answer this question? It needs to be answered, frankly. A bunch of people in his party are calling for it. He's got prominent senators like Ed Markey from Massachusetts openly urging it. All these guys from Massachusetts keep urging. You got what is it? The little redhead Kennedy.
Joe Kennedy.
Joe Kennedy the third. Right. He is calling for it. You know, whatever influence that schmuck has. He's like Beto O'Rourke, only he actually won an election in Massachusetts as a Kennedy. So, not that big a deal. So you have all these people on the left calling to pack the Supreme Court, and Biden won't say what he does. So why won't he? There are only two options. One, Biden wants to pack the court, but he's afraid to say so because it makes him very radical, and it would be a very unpopular position with the general electorate, and it could cost him votes. Two, he doesn't want to say, and maybe both of these things can be true at the same time. Two, he doesn't want to say it because he doesn't want to pack the court, but he doesn't want to deflate his liberal base so that he wants to make sure they all turn out to vote for him. So those are he has two bad options here. He's got a kind of Scylla and Charybdis situation, and he just doesn't want
John,
to say.
Look,
sorry,
not all of our listeners are familiar with the intricacies of Greek mythology.
Okay, that's the Odyssey. It's Odysseus going through a place where there's
he's between a rock and a hard place.
Rock and a hard place. He's got a monster on one place. Yeah, anyway, all right. So Biden doesn't want to say, but I think there is a third reason why he does not want to say, and I think it has to do with one Kamala Harris.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, it's not like the issue of whether or not to pack the court has never come up. Okay, the Democrats were talking about this long before Ginsburg died because they still thought the current 5-4 Republican they thought the old 5-4 Republican appointee majority, they thought that was illegitimate. Again, they think Gorsuch is illegitimate because of how Republicans held that seat open for a full year following Antonin Scalia's death, depriving the seat from Barack Obama and Merrick Garland, his nominee. And they view Kavanaugh as illegitimate because they believed all of the accusations against him of sexual assault. So they were talking about packing the court before Ginsburg died, and the Democrat candidates running for president were asked, "What do you think?" Biden said, "No, I don't believe in packing the court." Harris said she was open to it. Harris talked a number of times about what she this mealy-mouthed thing of, quote, court reform, by which she means massive packing of the federal courts in order to, creating new courts, which Democrats would then nominate all of the nominees to it. Basically, she wants to pack the courts on a broad scale. So she has expressed great openness to it. And I wonder if Biden's refusal to say is because there is still internal disagreement about what to do.
John, I think you're referencing something. There's a phenomenal speech. We won't actually play the audio, but in 2005, Joe Biden was actually giving a speech about court packing.
Oh.
On the floor of the Senate.
On the floor of the Senate, where he said that we shouldn't do it.
He said, the Senate again stood firm in 37 in the court packing attempt. In this particular example, the Senate's resolve is instructive to today's debate, so let me describe it in some detail. In the summer of 37, Roosevelt had just come off a landslide victory over Alf Landon. He had a Congress made up of solid New Dealers, but the 9 old men of the court were thwarting his agenda. In this environment, Roosevelt, I remember this old adage about power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Roosevelt, corrupted by power, in my view, unveiled his court-packing plan. He wanted to increase the number of justices to 15, allowing himself to nominate those additional judges it took an act of courage on the part of his own party institutionally to stand up against this power grab.
Yeah. So that's Biden talking about this in 2006 in politically different times. So there you go. Biden would be now. Let me just say this. I would not put it past Biden to completely flip-flop from that view. Okay, Biden is nothing if not inconsistent.
Consistently
inconsistent. He's great at this is just look, Biden held a certain position on abortion for 40 years and changed it overnight in 2019.
His positions, it's like they blow in the
summer wind.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank Sinatra, for coming in to save this last bit of the segment. So this is the most important issue in the election, I think. What does the Democrat candidate think about packing the Supreme Court? Hopefully, we'll get an answer. We didn't get it at the last debate. That'll do it for us at Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next week.